I'm East Coast Pete. Today I want to look at death. They're from Orlando originally. 1983, Chuck Schuldiner. His Scream Bloody Gore is now considered the first death metal record. But Possessed's Seven Churches and Necrophagia's Season of the Dead predated death. So you figured out which was first. I can't. Cam Lee and Rick Ross joined Schuldiner in recording several demos to be used as rehearsal tapes in 1984, but these tapes were circulated through the tape trading network, and Schuldiner changed his band's name from Mantis to Death, precipitated by the experience of the death of his brother Frank years earlier. Chuck wanted to turn his loss into something positive, remembering his brother. And after moving to San Francisco Bay Area, Chuck engaged Dirty Rotten Imbeciles drummer Eric Brecht and recorded the Back from the Dead demo. Chuck wasn't satisfied with it, so he moved back to Florida. He was invited to play on Slaughter's album in Canada. Then another move back to Frisco led to Chuck's meeting 17-year-old drummer Chris Reifart, and they recorded the Mutilation demo. And this led to the signing with Combat Records. The debut, Scream Bloody Gore, is seen as a template for death metal bands. Back home in Florida again, Chuck reformed his acquaintance with Rick Ross, and Ross brought in Terry Butler and Bill Andrews, and they recorded Leprosy. A European tour was scheduled, but you know what? It didn't go as planned, because it was not well planned, according to Chuck. Rick Ross was fired when the tour fell apart, and this was in 1989. Paul Masvidal and later James Murphy replaced Ross. Spiritual Healing was the third album, but Murphy quit. Chuck abandoned the gory lyrics, opting for more social critique. Melody was added to Death's sound. Another European tour was planned, but Chuck decided against traveling. He didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the last tour. However, Andrews and Butler sought to fulfill the band's contractual obligations and recruited Walter Trachler on guitar and Lou Corrales on vocals. Then they went out as Death. Chuck was not pleased. He took legal action, and Butler and Andrews were fired. Chuck would now only work with studio musicians. Steve DiGiorgio, Sean Reinhart, and Paul Masvidal released the Death album Human in 1991, and it was a success, and it sold well. The track Lack of Concentration was given a video for MTV. This time the tour went as planned, and Scott Carino replaced DiGiorgio on bass, but this was due to obligations DiGiorgio had with his band Sadus. And then in 1993, Reinert and Masvidal left to reform their band Cynic. Chuck recruited drummer Gene Hogland of Dark Angel, and Andy LaRoque from King Diamond. And they recorded individual through patterns. LaRoque was only borrowed from King Diamond, though. And so far, the new tour, he had to be replaced, and by then unknown guitarist Ralph Santola. The video for the track The Philosopher was featured on MTV's Beavis and Butthead, Who Found Death Cool. Beavis parodies Schuldner's vocals in a mock drive-through fast food order of tacos to go and some fries in a deathly growl. Better than what I just did. Check it out on MTV's YouTube video. It's hilarious. Anyhow, this spread the band's reputation to a new crop of fans. The next album was Symbolic, released in '95. Roadrunner Records was now the label. Chuck was not in line with what Roadrunner wanted to do, so he formed a new band named Control Denied. Tim Aymar came in on vocals for Death, but Chuck considered the vocals too harsh. Control Denied was more in line with what Chuck now wanted to do after the album The Fragile Art of Existence was released in 1999. Chuck was diagnosed with brain cancer at this point. Plans for tours were suspended, and Chuck's condition improved as he composed a second Control Denied LP. The tumor in his head took the vitality out of him. His weakened immune system failed, and pneumonia took him on December 13, 2001. What a rough couple of months. You'd have to say that Chuck didn't see himself as a death metal pioneer. He didn't bring religion to his lyrics, and the band evolved, became more melodic and with more complex sounds, stopping short of prog. Bassist Scott Clendenin also died in 2001, and he was 47. It was not revealed what his death was a result from. Here's Death's 7-album discography. 1. Scream, Bloody Gore. And that is just absolutely chock full of gory images, bloody splatter. This is what got Death moving. The second album, Leprosy, was maybe a little less gory. The subject matter certainly wasn't pleasant. You all know what leprosy is, right? It's when the nerves in your body stop reacting to pain and you walk around hurting yourself, not healing because you don't feel the pain. You walk around with your arm hanging by a few threads and you don't even notice. Leprosy is actually a a certain kind of a virus, but it has been used to explain many different deforming types of diseases, and the leprosy communes that existed during the time of the Bible really referred to something other than the virus. Little Mr. Know-It-All stuff for you there. The third album, Spiritual Healing. Yeah, this is definitely quite different from the gory beginnings of this band. They're getting that Chuck really wanted to get some intellectuality into his music. Not an easy thing to do when you're screeching and screaming at the top of your lungs. I don't really think that Chuck saw the growling side of death to be the major component. The guitars were, especially Chuck's rhythm guitar. This is when rhythm guitar was placed squarely in the front of the band. Not taking anything away from his vocals, they were amazing. Fourth album, Human. There's a bunch of new musicians here, but it's definitely death. Wherever Chuck parks his axe, you're gonna have death. And the fifth album, Individual Thought Patterns. I'm just gonna have to say go listen to that and tell me if you think it's even the same band. You know, you're gonna evolve if you have a healthy brain, and you may be evolving when you have an unhealthy brain. It's when life mutates that evolution happens. So maybe the evolution of death can be seen as a result of Chuck having his health problems. Can we blame his unhappy tours in Europe on this? No, I don't think so. He wasn't diagnosed until later. He just wanted the tours to go smoothly, and let me tell you, if you tour Europe on a shoestring, you're going to run into some very serious problems. Chuck was not a druggie. If he had been, maybe he would have felt better. Maybe he would have been able to get through these tours. That's what usually happens, you know. You discover drugs during the tour and it just takes all the stress away. But let me tell you, it's the stress that makes you great. You transfer it to your instrument and your music, and the adrenaline just takes off. And your audience picks up on that. So if you're feeling stress within your band, it can be a good thing. That's my advice for you. The sixth album, Symbolic. Now this is the time when his health was going, and Sound of Perseverance was actually released after he died. What an influence this guy had. I'm not going to say that he invented it, because he did hear Possessed on his first trip out to San Francisco, and there's evidence that he exclaimed to a friend that after hearing Possessed, he decided that that's what he wanted to be like. Now, if this is a true story, then, Possessed gets the credit, but you never know nowadays whether stuff is true or not. I mean, someone like me could come along and state something as fact, and it could take off and be seen as fact when it's really not. I mean, our wonderful video age has given rise to mass distortion of factual evidence. Now just think about this. If you get into a car accident with a semi and it gets on your camcorder or on the truck's camcorder, they can actually go in and change the sign that's on the side of the truck. So it wasn't the company's fault that the accident happened. You think this doesn't happen? Well, Photoshop, baby. Now, my videos are not like that. I'm not monetized. I just put stuff on because it's fun. I enjoy it. I want to study these bands and want to share with you whatever I find out about, and hopefully I can learn something about heavy metal music, which I really didn't know about until fairly recently. My fault. I'm totally in now, if you'll have me. So thank you very much for being with me on my show. Metalheads only. See you next time.